Good afternoon and welcome to this teleconferencing session of BSc Honours in Optometry and Ophthalmic Techniques. Students, in the last teleconferencing session on this basic human sciences, we have covered three systems of the body, that is cardiovascular system, digestive system and respiratory system. And today in the course BOS 003, that is on basic human sciences, we will be talking about another three systems, that is called central nervous system, endocrine system and excretory system. And I will request that if there are any questions, you keep your questions towards the end, or if there is something necessary urgently, you can intervene in between also. And to talk about this three systems, that is central nervous system, respiratory system and endocrine system, we have with us Professor G.K. Das. Professor G.K. Das is a professor in the ophthalmology in GTB hospital. Welcome, Dr. Das. Would you tell our student that the anatomy of the nervous system, what are the various parts, central nervous system, peripheral nervous system, sympathetic nervous system, and in brief also a little bit about the functioning of the central nervous system.
Good afternoon, everybody. First, we'll discuss what is the main function of the nervous system. It controls and coordinates function of most part and system of the body. Whole of the body is controlled by the nervous system. The body's internal communication network, it is a nervous system. It communicates to all parts of the body through various routes that we will discuss. It controls the body's activity by sending messages between different parts of the nervous system. From one part of the nervous system to another part of the nervous system, the messages are being passed.
So it controls, can we look back, controls and
coordinate function of most part and system of the body.
Okay.
So all the functions of the body being coordinated by the nervous system and the brain and spinal cord.
Okay.
We'll discuss. So what are the parts of nervous system? We can grossly divide it into three parts. Central nervous system. As the name suggests, it is centrally located and control all parts of the body. It controls peripheral part of the body through one type of nervous system that is known as peripheral nervous system. Another type of nervous system is autonomic nervous system. As the name suggests, autonomic, it has some functions which are independent of brain signal. So that is the reason it is known as autonomic nervous system. Central nervous system, peripheral nervous system and autonomic nervous system. First we will discuss central nervous system. The main parts of the central nervous system is brain and spinal cord. First we will discuss on brain. It is the control center of nervous system. It is located in the head and it is protected by a bony structure that is known as skull, or it is a skull is a bony cavity. So what is the skull looks like? So this is the skull, this is a bony cavity, and within which the brain is situated. The skull gives protection to the brain. So if you see again in this diagram, so outer layer is your skull and this is your brain. So different parts of the brain, and the continuous to the brain, that is your spinal cord. So main function of the skull, it gives protection to the brain and other structures within it. So this is what a brain looks like. And other than the skull bone, there are three layers which covers the brain. So these are known as meninges. Please remember, the brain is covered by a membrane-like structure. This is known as meninges.
These coverings are known as meninges.
Meninges, which covers the bone. These meninges are three layers. Outer is dura mater, middle is arachnoid matter, and inner is pia mater. These three layers cover the brain. These membranes are known as meninges, because sometimes there occur infection of the meninges, that we call it meningitis. So that is the reason we should know little bit about layers of the brain that gives protection to the brain structure. Then we will discuss what are the parts of the brain. You can divide brain to three parts: forebrain, midbrain and hindbrain. Forebrain, as the name suggests, it is situated at the anterior and upper part. It is the largest part of the brain. It is divided in two parts by a central groove. If you see this diagram, this is one brain, this is one side of the brain, this is another side of the brain, and this is divided by a central groove. And that groove is known as corpus callosum. And each part of the brain is known as hemisphere. That means there are two hemispheres, right hemisphere and left hemisphere. Now we'll discuss grossly what are the different parts of the forebrain. One is your frontal lobe, parietal lobe, occipital lobe, temporal lobe. So forebrain is divided into four parts. Frontal, as the name suggests, it is situated anteriorly. The next to it is parietal bone, then occipital and temporal lobe. So this is what a brain looks like. This is the anterior part of the brain that is known as frontal lobe. Next to it is the parietal lobe. Then posteriorly it is the occipital lobe, and this is what is known as temporal lobe, that is situated just beneath the temporal bone of the skull. This is your frontal lobe, parietal lobe, occipital lobe, temporal lobe. And please remember, all these lobes have different functions to do. If damage to occur frontal lobe, the functions of the functions which occur through frontal lobe are affected. Again, this is the part of the brain. If you see here, so this is the brain, and this is the continuous in the brain inferiorly. So here is a gland is situated that is known as a pituitary gland. We will discuss about this gland during our session on endocrine. And underneath the brain, another structure that is situated, that is your cerebellum. And the various parts of the brain have different role to play. The frontal lobe, it controls personality, thought, memory and behavior. Personality, thought, memory and behavior being controlled by the frontal lobe. The temporal lobe helps to control behavior, memory, hearing, sight and emotion. The occipital lobe is concerned with vision. The visual center is situated in the occipital lobe. Any brain damage to this part of the lobe or any brain tumor may affect, and that may cause decrease in vision. When there is damage to occur to the occipital lobe, visual acuity is reduced.
So I think this is more
important. That is the reason I am from the ophthalmic and optometry point of view, because here the visual center is situated and it is situated posteriorly, a part of the brain. So any damage occur posteriorly at the occipital lobe, there may be damage to the visual center, that may cause decrease of vision. And the parietal lobe for language and speech, a tumor here can affect the speech, reading, writing or understanding of words. So that you see, different parts of the lobes have different functions. Now after forebrain is the midbrain. As the name suggests, it is situated at the midline, and it is situated below the cerebrum. It connects pons and cerebellum with the cerebrum. The nucleus of the third nerve, that fourth nerve and anterior part of the fifth cranial nerves are situated here, and the auditory visual pathways are also situated here. So this is your midbrain, this part. So this is your cerebellum, that is part of the brain, and it is just beneath it, you will find the midbrain. And please remember, the nucleus of the third cranial nerve, fourth cranial nerve and anterior part of the fifth cranial nerve situated here. Then is your hindbrain. It has three parts. One is your pons, medulla oblongata and cerebellum. Pons, medulla oblongata and cerebellum. The cerebellum is the largest part of the hindbrain. So this is what a cerebellum is there. So it is situated posteriorly, and this is the largest part of the hindbrain. Just like your brain, it has two parts known as cerebellar hemisphere, and both hemispheres are connected by a structure that is known as vermis. And this part of the brain, that is cerebellum, is responsible for muscle coordination, equilibrium, maintenance of muscle tone. If cerebellum is damaged, you cannot work properly. You may fall to one side. So for that, for muscular coordination, for equilibrium and maintenance of the muscle tone, cerebellum is responsible. The cerebellar disease can cause loss of balance and difficulty in coordinating movements. Any type of movement, you need some balance. So that balance is given by the cerebellum. Then is your pons. It is just situated below the midbrain. It is inferiorly, it is continuous with the medulla oblongata. The nucleus of the fifth to eighth cranial nerve situated at the pons. It is situated just below the midbrain. It is continuous inferiorly with the medulla oblongata, and the nucleus of the fifth, sixth, seventh and eighth cranial nerves are situated in the pons. The next part is your medulla oblongata. It is the lowest part of the midbrain. It is inferiorly continuous with the spinal cord. If you see here, this is the pons, this is the medulla oblongata. The length is about 3 cm. The nucleus of the 9th, 10th, 11th and 12th cranial nerves are situated. There are 12 cranial nerves. We will discuss all these things. The 9th, 10th, 11th and 12th cranial nerves nucleus situated in the medulla oblongata. The higher respiratory and vasomotor centers are situated. So any damage to the medulla oblongata can cause disturbance of the respiratory system and cardiovascular system. The higher centers for respiratory and cardiovascular system is situated at medulla oblongata. So what is brainstem? It is the part of the brain that connects the forebrain, that is your cerebral hemisphere, and the hindbrain with the spinal cord. The spinal cord is the continuation of the brain, and the brainstem connects the main part of the brain with the spinal cord. So that is what is known as brainstem. All the nerves leaving the brain to go to the limbs and trunks of the body pass through here. So all the nerve fiber pass through the brainstem. It controls the body function that we usually don't think about. Like blood pressure, we don't know how the blood pressure is being controlled. So that is being done by the brainstem. Swallowing,
blood pressure is controlled by the brainstem.
Your breathing, heartbeat, all are managed by the actions of the brain. So this is the main function of the brainstem. So any injury to the brainstem, it is quite fatal. The next is a spinal cord. It is an extension of the brain. It is a long tubular structure. It starts as the continuation of the medulla oblongata. It ends at the level of the lumbar second or third vertebra. The length is about 45 cm in male and 42 cm in female. It is an extension of the brain. All the peripheral parts of the body gets its nerve supply coming from the spinal cord. That is, spinal cord is a continuation of the brain. It is a part of the central nervous system. So if you, this is the brain, if you see this is the continuation of the brain. And different color coding has given because there are different parts of the spinal cord. This is your cervical parts. That means they are situated within a canal that is known as vertebral canal, and that part of the canal situated within the cervical vertebra that is known as cervical part of the spinal cord. Then is your thoracic part of the spinal cord, lumbar part of the spinal cord, and the sacral part of the spinal cord. It is enclosed and protected by the vertebral column. Otherwise, if there is damage occurred to the spinal cord, there may be paralysis.
Like the brain is
protected by the skull, and the spinal cord is protected by a bony canal that is formed by the vertebral column, that is known as vertebral canal. The shape is ovoid. The central region, you will find a small canal-like structure that.
Yes, Jaipur, please come up. Yes, Jaipur.
हेलो
हाँ बोलिए.
हेलो
हाँ बोलिए.
गुड आफ्टरनून सर.
गुड आफ्टरनून.
सर आपने अभी बीच में सर ने पढ़ाते टाइम इक्विलिब्रियम वर्ड यूज किया है. व्हाट इज इक्विलिब्रियम?
इक्विलिब्रियम. अच्छा अच्छा, बहुत अच्छा. क्या नाम आपका बच्चे?
किवनप्रीत.
हाँ.
Equilibrium means, for example, I am walking in it. For example, I have to walk straight. So if my muscles are not coordinated, I may fall to one side to other side. So that is what is known as equilibrium. That is being balanced. Neither I will fall to left side or right side. So if something is controlling me, what is known as equilibrium.
जैसे हम चलते हैं तो आपने देखा होगा कि हम जो है अगर एक स्ट्रेट लाइन में चलना चाहे तो हम चाहे तो उस पर कदम रखते आगे बढ़ते चले जाते हैं. अगर इक्विलिब्रियम नहीं रहेगा तो हमारी टेंडेंसी ये हो सकता है कि हम एक तरफ या दूसरी तरफ गिर सकते हैं, या मूवमेंट्स जो है पैर के जो डगमगा सकते हैं. जैसे आपने देखा होगा द पर्सन्स हु आर कंज्यूमिंग अल्कोहल
they lost their cerebral function, they lose their equilibrium, they may fall to one side or another side.
तो आपकी समझ में आ गया होगा इक्विलिब्रियम क्या होता है. इक्विलिब्रियम जो होता है जो बॉडी की जो स्टैंडिंग में कैपेसिटी होती है उसको मेंटेन करना. अदरवाइज अगर इक्विलिब्रियम मेंटेन नहीं रहेगा, इवन खड़े होने पे भी आदमी एक तरफ या दूसरी तरफ गिर सकता है.
So this is a structure of the vertebral canal within which the spinal cord is situated. This is a cervical region, then is your thoracic region, then is your lumbar region and sacral region. So there is a canal within the vertebral column that is known as vertebral canal, within which the spinal cord is situated. So again there is another diagram showing spinal cords, the different part. This is your cervical part and the thoracic part, lumbar part, sacral part, and at the end you will find the coccygeal part. So these are the different parts of the spinal cord: cervical, thoracic, lumbar and sacral. Just like brain, the spinal cord also that is covered by three membrane-like structure. That is, outer is dura mater, in middle is arachnoid matter, and inner is pia mater. So they also give support to the spinal cord. And the spinal cord is divided into 31 segments. That is, 31 parts are there, and motor nerves start from the anterior part. The motor nerves which supply to the peripheral part of the body, they start from the anterior part, and the sensory nerves start from the posterior part.
दो तरह के nerves होते हैं, motor nerves और sensory
center
nerves.
nerve. Again, this is the diagram. This is your anterior path. This is your motor path. The posteriorly it is a posterior this thing, and both the anterior and posterior path unite to form what is known as spinal nerves. एक anterior से आता है, एक पीछे से आता है, दोनों मिलके spinal nerves बनाते हैं. The motor nerve starts anteriorly, the sensory nerve starts posteriorly. Both parts join to form the spinal nerves on each side of the spinal cord. So there are 31 pairs of the spinal nerves. So these 31 pairs are divided into 8 pairs of the cervical nerves, 12 pairs of the thoracic nerve. Please remember there are 7 cervical vertebrae, but there are 8 cervical nerves, one extra. 12 pairs of the thoracic nerve, that is 12 thoracic vertebrae. You have 12 pair of thoracic nerves, 5 lumbar nerves, 6 pairs of the sacral nerves, and 1 pair of coccygeal nerves. So in total there is 31 pairs of the spinal nerves. These nerves supply the peripheral part of the body. And the spinal cord structure, outer is white matter, inner is grey matter. So what is the function of the spinal cord? To and fro transmission of information between the brain and different parts of the body. It is the brain which controls us, and the message comes through spinal cord. The spinal cord acts as a medium through which information is passed from the peripheral part of the body to the brain, and from the brain to the peripheral part of the body. That is a to and fro transmission of information between the brain and different parts of the body. So after we are discussing the central nervous system, we will discuss peripheral nervous system. It consists of 2 parts, cranial nerves and the spinal nerves. Cranial nerve, these nucleus are situated within the brains, and that's the reason they are known as, these nerve fibers of these nuclei, they are known as cranial nerves. And the spinal nerves, they are part of the peripheral nervous systems. The cranial nerves arises from the cranium or brain, so called cranial nerves. It may be sensory, motor or mixed.
हाँ, जयपुर पूछिए. जयपुर बोलिए.
गुड आफ्टरनून सर.
गुड आफ्टरनून. क्या नाम बोलिए अपना?
सर नवदीप अग्निहोत्री.
जोर से. नवनीत.
नवदीप.
हाँ नवदीप बोलिए, अपना सवाल पूछिए.
सर मेरा क्वेश्चन ये है, व्हाट इज द पैरामीटर एंड ड्यूरामीटर?
पैरामीटर और ड्यूरामीटर.
एंड सर व्हाइट मैटर एंड ग्रे मैटर.
व्हाइट मैटर एंड ग्रे मैटर एंड पैरामीटर एंड ड्यूरामीटर.
या सर ये होता क्या है?
हाँ बताते.
See, as I told you, the brain and spinal cord, they are covered by membranes. There are 3 layers of the membranes. One is your outer, middle and inner. The outer layer is known as dura mater, the middle layer is arachnoid matter, and inner is pia mater.
ये मेरे ख्याल ये जानना चाहते हैं, he wants to know कि what is this dura matter is composed of.
They are usually composed of fibrous tissue.
Fibrous tissue.
They are fibrous tissue.
They are not nervous.
They are not part of the nervous system.
Basically consisting of the
fibrous tissue. And so basic gives protection to the brain.
तो इसमें नर्वस टिश्यू नहीं होता, बेसिकली फाइब्रस टिश्यू है जैसा डॉक्टर दास ने बताया. एंड इसमें इनका जो बेसिक फंक्शन जो है, क्योंकि दे आर द कवरिंग ऑफ द ब्रेन, तो उसका फंक्शन जो होता है उसको ब्रेन की जो अंदर एक स्ट्रक्चर है उसको प्रोटेक्ट करने के लिए फाइब्रस टिश्यू होता है. एक कुशन जैसा है, उसको एक प्रोटेक्शन देता है.
Sometimes
अगर कोई झटका लग जाए कुछ कर दे तो उसको वो टॉलरेट करना.
Sometimes if there is a trauma, there may be bleeding within these layers. We call it dural subdural hemorrhage, extradural hemorrhage.
हमने सुना subdural hemorrhage होता है.
That is a bleeding between the bone and the dura, known as extradural subdural hemorrhage. So they are essentially protective membranes. So there are 12 pairs of the cranial nerves. The first known as olfactory, it is concerned the smell. The second is optic, that is essential for us, that is for vision. The third is known as oculomotor nerve for eye movements.
This is very important.
This is very important thing. I am not going into details because this is a basic ophthalmic science class. That this muscle, there are different recti muscle. The third oculomotor supply only specific muscles of the eye. Fourth is trochlear, that also concerned with eye movements. The fifth is trigeminal, that is concerned with nerve supply to the face, mouth, and also it is related to corneal sensation. The sixth is abducent nerve, also concerned with eye movements. The seventh is facial, it is concerned with the muscles of the face. Eighth is vestibular, related to hearing and balance. Ninth is glossopharyngeal, involved with the tongue and pharynx. 10th is vagus, it is related to heart, gastrointestinal system and glands. 11th is accessory, neck muscles, and 12th is hypoglossal, tongue. All these nerves, they are given in your textbooks, their functions.
And they can be remembered
They
by
can
formula UPTA FAG.
Yes.
There is a formula for that UPTA FAG.
Yes.
They can be remembered by that. And I think these are cranial nerves are very important component of the central nervous system, because they are supplying the various part of the brain.
And for us, the ocular supply, optic nerve is important thing for optometrist.
Third, fourth,
second, third, fourth, sixth. And so also trigeminal nerve, that is related to corneal sensation. The spinal nerves, these are the part of the peripheral nervous system. There are 31 pairs of the nerves, 8 pairs of the cervical, 12 pairs of the thoracic, 5 pairs of the lumbar, 5 pairs of the sacral, 1 pair of the coccygeal nerves. Then we will discuss autonomic nervous system. It controls the involuntary functions of the body. That means the functions that is not under our control. Just like heart, it is not under our control. Heart beats itself. So that is a function is governed by the autonomic nervous system. There are two types of autonomic nervous system. One is your sympathetic nervous system, another is parasympathetic nervous system. Two types, one is sympathetic, another is parasympathetic. The both arises from the lateral column corresponding segment of the spinal cord. Please remember, they are coming from the lateral part of the spinal cord. And two T systems, one is a sympathetic and other one is a parasympathetic. The sources of the sympathetic nervous system, they are of thoracolumbar origin, from the T12 to L5, thoracic 12 segment of the spinal cord to the lumbar 5 segment of the spinal cord. From this part, sympathetic arises. Also it has a lumbosacral origin. Two origin of the sympathetic system, thoracolumbar origin or the another is lumbosacral origin. And the parasympathetic, it is a craniosacral origin. It is 10th, it is there related to vagus, 3rd nerve, 7th nerve, 9th nerve and also 10th cranial nerve, that is vagus. What are the components of the autonomic nervous system? It is a sensory neurons and its fibers. That means that it has a sensory component and motor component. Sensory means it sends impulses, that is passes information from viscera to the nervous system. For example, it is any information going to the heart, to the nervous system goes through the autonomic nervous pathway.
There is a call from Kanpur.
हाँ कानपुर पूछिए.
गुड आफ्टरनून सर.
गुड आफ्टरनून.
जी मेरा नाम इक़्तिदार आलम है.
हाँ बोलिए इक़्तिदार आलम, क्या सवाल है आपका?
मुझे मालूम करना था, जो ब्रेन में सीएसएफ जो रहता है, सेरेब्रल स्पाइनल फ्लूइड, उसका जो फ्लो रहता है मेनिंजेस में, वो डिस्टर्ब जब हो जाता है तो इंटरनल हाइड्रोसेफेलस कंडीशन होती है, एक्सटर्नल हाइड्रोसेफेलस कंडीशन जो रहती है, तो थोड़ा इसको एक्सप्लेन करके थोड़ा बता दीजिए. जैसे जो ब्रेन में रहेगा और जो स्पाइनल कॉर्ड में रहता है, डिफरेंट थोड़ा रहता है या थोड़ा सा सेम रहता है, थोड़ा इसका एक्सप्लेन थोड़ा करिए, दोनों इंटरनल एंड एक्सटर्नल हाइड्रोसेफेलस कंडीशन.
अच्छा, ये मेरा ख्याल अभी आपने सवाल जल्दी पूछ लिया. मेरा ख्याल सीएसएफ हम कवर करने जा रहे थे.
हमें बता देता हूँ अभी.
सीएसएफ के बारे में.
सीएसएफ is known as cerebrospinal fluid. The cerebrospinal fluid of the brain is also continuous with the cerebrospinal fluids of the spinal cord. It is a continuous cavity. So this is a fluid-like things, and the main function of this fluid is gives nutrition to the brain. Whenever there is any obstruction, we call that condition as hydrocephalus. So for example, there is some cavities within the brain itself that contains that called ventricles. Just like in the heart that is called ventricle, there is one cavity also within the brain that is known as ventricles, and they supply the central cerebrospinal fluid is situated. If there is a blockage at the exit, so what will happen? The size of the ventricle is increased, that is known as internal hydrocephalus. The size of the cavity, as the size of the cavity increases, the brain structure gets damaged or atrophied, that is known as internal hydrocephalus. What will happen? If this problem occurs in childhood, you will find the size of the brain is increasing or the size of the skull is increasing. So that is what is known as hydrocephalus. So when there is a blockage to the CSF pathway, hydrocephalus occurs. So if there is a blockage occurring in the external part, so that also lead to external hydrocephalus, or if there is any blockage of the central canal of the spinal cord also can lead to hydrocephalus.
तो ये समझ लीजिए आप जो डॉक्टर साहब ने, डॉक्टर दास ने बताया कि CSF जो है सेरिब्रो स्पाइनल फ्लूइड जो है एक कैनाल के अंदर होता है। उस कैनाल के अंदर ब्लॉकेज आने से या वो कंजेनाइटल भी हो सकता है, जब
फ्लूइड पास नहीं करता है,
फ्लूइड पास नहीं करने से जो है
बढ़ जाता है, सिक्रेशन होता है लेकिन कैविटी बढ़ जाता है, इट कॉजेस डैमेज टू द ब्रेन,
उसको हम हाइड्रोकेफेलस बोलते हैं।
The most of the viscera receive supply from both sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system. The most of the, and usually the two divisions have opposing action. Giving an example, sympathetic will increase the heartbeat, but parasympathetic system decrease the heart rate. The sympathetic, if there will be a sympathetic stimulation, heart rate will be increased, but if there is a parasympathetic stimulation, there occur decrease in heart rate. Under normal circumstances, both the sympathetic system and parasympathetic system, they balance each other. So the heart rate is maintained. But if because of some reason the sympathetic system is stimulated, heart rate is increased. If the parasympathetic system is stimulated, heart rate is decreased. So they balance the system. That means both have opposite roles to play.
I think you can show the last slide. I think they have not.
Which one?
This last slide. No. Which were showing the balance of the system. Next one. Next.
This one?
No. Last one.
So later. Okay. So what are the basic structures of the nervous system? The cells of the nervous system, they are known as neurons and neuroglia. So what are the neurons? These are the cells which conduct or transmit impulses, and they are classified according to the direction they conduct impulses, either sensory neurons or motor neurons. The sensory neurons means, otherwise known as afferent neuron, they send impulses from all peripheral parts of the body to brain and spinal cords. These are known as sensory neurons. These are the cells which sends impulses, either it is sensory or it is motor. The sensory sends impulses from all peripheral parts of the body to brain and spinal cords. These are motor neurons, otherwise known as efferent neurons. They send impulse from brain and spinal cord to the peripheral parts of the body. So those impulse coming from the brain and spinal cord, they are known as efferent neurons, and these neurons, they send impulse from the brain and spinal cords. So what are the basic structures of a neuron? It contains a cell body. This is a cell body and different processes. These processes either axons or dendrites. If you will see, this is a neuron and the central part is known as cell body, and these are the different processes. So this is your axon, and you will find different 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 dendrites. So these are different types of neuron. Either it is bipolar, that means 2 processes, unipolar, 1 process, multipolar, multiple processes, or pyramidal cells. So what is an axon? The pathway by which the cell body send impulses known as axons. The cell has to send an impulse. This impulse being sent by one type of pathway, that is known as axons. The diameter vary from one part to another. The larger diameter axons send impulse in a faster rate. So what is the function of the dendrites? The path by which the neurons receive impulses. The neuron sends impulses by axons but receive impulses by dendrites. And a single neuron may have more than one dendrites, but one neuron has only one axon. They synapse with other neurons of the axons. That means dendrites gets its connection only with axons. So this is where you can find this is a synapse. That means the joining between the dendrites and axon, that is known as synapse, and through which the nerve impulse being transmitted.
जहाँ पे डेंड्राइट और एक्सॉन जुड़ते हैं उसको सिनेप्स.
So this is a dendrites, this is an axon. You can see the axon, and here in this direction the message is being passed. Then your neuroglia, they are the supporting cells of the nervous systems. As I told you, neurons, they are the nerve cells, and the neuroglia, they are the supporting cells. There are three types of supporting cells. One is your neuroglial cells. They are found in the brain and spinal cord. Ependymal cells, they are lining the different cavities of the brain and the spinal cord. And another Schwann cells, they are found in the nerve sheath. Nerve sheath is a covering of the nerves. That is, the nerve sheath is formed by the one type of cell that is known as Schwann cell. So in summary, you can know the sensory function. That means senses changes both within and outside of the body. If there is any impulse coming from within the body or outer part of the body, there occurs stimulation of the sensory systems. Then another is integrative function. The sensation goes to the brain, analyze the sensory information and makes decision regarding the appropriate behavior. This is done by the brain. And what the motor function? The muscular contraction and glandular secretion. So whenever there is any stimulus, for example, there is any stimulus in the skin, impulse is going from this part of the skin to the brain. So now the brain is sending impulse again. The impulse going to the brain, that is by the sensory system. What impulse brain is sending, that is your motor system. This occur in an integrated manner. This is what is the main function of the nervous system. Thank you.
So, Dr. Das has told you that the central the nervous system is comprising of two things, that brain and spinal cord. This is central nervous system, but otherwise central system, this nervous system is comprising of three parts. That is, you told that
central nervous system,
peripheral and autonomic
nervous system.
Yes, Rajgiri. Rajgiri, पूछिए सवाल अपना. Good afternoon. बोलिए. आपका नाम? दोबारा बोलेंगे आप अपना सवाल?
हेलो
हेलो, हाँ बोलिए. हाँ बोलिए बोलिए.
क्वेश्चन इज व्हाट इज द नोट्स ऑफ रेगुलर?
व्हाट इज? आप दोबारा बोलेंगे सवाल? दोबारा बोलिए सवाल. आपकी आवाज ठीक तरह आ नहीं रही है, थोड़ा सा दोबारा बोलेंगे? चलिए आप दोबारा ट्राई कर सकते हैं फोन. आई थिंक phone got disconnected. So thoda sa for the benefit of students, can you just give a gist of that? What is this whole nervous?
Nervous system, three parts: central, peripheral and autonomic. The central nervous system is brain and spinal cord. It is the brain which controls all parts of the body and it sends impulse to the spinal cord. From the spinal cords, the nerves are being supplied. There are 31 pairs of these nerves which gets both the sensation, both sensory and motor. Sensory sensation means something coming from the skin, other parts of the body. He sends impulses to the spinal cord. From the spinal cord, it go to the brain. And appropriate sensation comes to the brain. That is again through spinal cord and to the peripheral parts of the body. So that is an integrated approach. For example, there is a mosquito is biting here. So now the brain is getting some impulse to the brain. So what will happen? Brain automatically hitting that area. So this is done by the brains. That is a motor system, and the prick of the mosquito, that is the sensory system. So that is being controlled by the brain. So it is an integrated approach, and the brain and the spinal cord and the peripheral nervous system, so they get impulse from the brain and also sends impulse to the brain. So this is the main function of the brain. It is the brain which controls every parts of the body.
राजगिरी बोलिए.
Yes sir, I am Ramesh Kumar from Rajgiri.
हाँ बोलिए रमेश, क्या सवाल है आपका?
Yes sir, my question is related with nerve cells.
हाँ बोल, क्या सवाल है नर्व सेल से?
That is, what is nodes of Ranvier?
Nodes of
What is nodes of Ranvier?
So
and second one is what is astrocytes? And another question is related with A spinal cord explain the ventricles of brain.
Ventricles of the brain.
Yeah. See the ventricle. There are different the ventricle. There are cavities within the veins. So there are third ventricle. Different names are given. That is third ventricle, fourth ventricles. They contain CSF, central cerebrospinal fluids. And the main function of the cerebrospinal fluids give nutrition. So there is a free flow of cerebrospinal fluid from the different parts of the ventricle. The ventricle essential, there are cavities within the brain, and these ventricles are also through cerebral aqueduct. It is connected with the canal of the spinal cord. So the cerebrospinal fluid passes from the brain and also to the spinal cords. So these cavities within the brain, they are known as ventricles. And the second question was?
Second, that node of...
So these are the, knowingly I didn't tell you because little this thing, because the nerve impulse passes from the one part of the body. So one part, I'll show you this diagram. So from the coming, the nerve supply, there are the pathways by which the cell body send impulses. And, just one second. And the nerve passes from the axons and it is going to another axons. Here the one type of structure is present, that is known as rod of Ranvier at the junctions. So sometimes
ये दिखा देंगे जरा, एक मिनट दिखा देंगे इसमें बताएं.
So these are the nerve cells, these are the dendrites, these are the axons. So these are the direction of the nerve impulses. At the junction you will find there are special type of thing that is known as rod of Ranvier at the junction. Sometimes impulse passes directly through it, so that these are the known as rod of Ranvier cells. So these details are not required at your stage, but just for you remember saying.
Since I has got curiosity.
Yeah. The third question was astrocytes.
Astrocytes.
So astrocyte cells, they are the cells, and they are situated within the brain. So they don't have any nervous action. They are more of a fibrous type of cells, and they produce astrocytes or the fibers, nerve fibers, essentially.
उम्मीद है आपको आपके तीनों सवालों का जवाब मिल गया होगा. अगर फिर भी कोई ऐसी प्रॉब्लम है तो हम ब्रेक के बाद 15 मिनट बाद फिर दोबारा वापस आएंगे. अगर आपको लगता है नहीं क्लियर हो पाया तो दोबारा से आपको क्लैरिफाई करने की कोशिश करेंगे.